Growth is one of the key. Growth is important, folks. We know that growth is critical, especially when it comes to leadership. But every leader talks about growth. But a lot of leaders are trying to grow in isolation. And that may be one of the biggest reasons growth slow down. Tonight, we're talking about the gap between growth and isolation. This is the 30. Let's get started. Well, hello there, gang. Welcome to the 30, and thank you, certainly thank you for joining me on this another episode of the 30. We are continuing our series, The Leadership Gap. So tonight, we're talking about the gap between growth and isolation. Thank you for joining us once again. This is a space for meaningful conversation, and it's designed to support personal, professional, and leadership growth. The 30 is a production of the Jackman Group LLC, where we focus on developing leaders, enhancing teams, and helping organizations with their strategic planning. Remember to go ahead and like and comment on this episode. If you're watching on YouTube, do me a huge favor. Subscribe to this channel. I will greatly appreciate it. On this episode, as I said, we are continuing our Leadership Gap series with a conversation I believe is deeply relevant for leaders right now. The gap between growth and isolation. From my experience, what I found is that a large majority of leaders want to grow. They want to improve. They want to get stronger. They want to become more effective. And they want to lead at a higher level. Leaders also know that they need to keep growing. They know leadership keeps changing. They know the demands are becoming heavier and heavier, week after week, month after month, year after year. And they know that they cannot afford to stay static. We got to keep moving. So that's what we want to focus on. But here's the issue. The issue is not that leaders don't have a desire for growth. You've heard me said that previously. The real issue is that many leaders try to pursue growth in isolation. See, as leaders, we sometimes try to figure things out on our own. We think we are the smartest people, right? The smartest person, we can figure it out. We can do it all on our own. We carry the pressure on our own. We don't need anyone else. We process decisions on our own. We work or try to work through the frustration when that comes up on our own. And over time, that isolation starts to affect the quality of our growth. Because growth in isolation often becomes slower, heavier, and narrower than it needs to be. And that's important because isolation doesn't always look obvious, folks. what isolation really looks like is this. Isolation is not always physical. Sometimes the leader can be surrounded by people, and we can still be isolated. We can be surrounded by our team members. We can be surrounded by our peers, other leaders, and we are still isolated. We are in meetings, we're in conversations. So we spend time with others, and yet, we remain isolated in the places that matters most. See, we remain isolated in our thinking. We remain isolated in our decision making. We remain isolated in our processing. And we remain isolated in our development. But if we truly take a look at ourselves, if we truly look at what isolation is, if we truly understand isolation and a definition of isolation and the impact of isolation, because isolation has a cost. It can create blind spots. It can reinforce bad habits for us. It can make us as leaders overly confident in areas where we still need to be challenged. In other words, we try to overcompensate in situations, or we may become overly discouraged in areas where we really need perspective. And those are just some of the costs of isolation. See, and this is why growth in isolation can become so dangerous. Because when we as leaders, when no one stretches us, when no one challenges us, when no one questions us, when no one sharpens us or step in is willing to help us see what we cannot see, when we don't have that coach or that person, that mentor to help us with our blind spots, where we cannot see what's around the corner, we may still be active. We may still be busy. And yes, we may still be producing at a very high level, but our growth may be far more limited than we realize. But the question becomes, what does healthy growth actually look like? What does healthy growth actually need? And I'm glad that you asked that, because I'm going to give you a couple of what I call nuggets as to what healthy growth needs. One of the nuggets that we'll start with is that healthy growth needs the right environment. I call it the right atmosphere. We need to be in the right atmosphere, the right environment in order for healthy growth to take place. Healthy growth also needs people. In essence, we need a community. We need people around us. We need our peers. We need others that are from different disciplines or market segments. We need a coach. We need mentors. We need people to help us. It also helps that we need individuals that can challenge us. We don't need yes people all the time. We don't need someone to say, when we say, go here, they say, yes, sir, yes, ma'am. We don't need that. We need people. Healthy growth need people who challenges us. We also need individuals to support us. But one of the keys that healthy growth needs is that we need honest and candid feedback from those around us. Honest and candid feedback. Not criticism, not constructive criticism. You know how I feel about that already. But we need honest and candid feedback. Folks, growth deepens when leaders stay in the right rooms. Not just rooms where we're comfortable. Not just rooms where we are constantly affirmed. And don't get me wrong, affirmations are good. Nothing is wrong with being affirmed because affirmation sometimes encourages us. It also helps us to keep going. But too much affirmation can become a negative, it can become a barrier. So we need affirmation. We also should be in the rooms where we are being stretched, where we are being challenged. We should be in the rooms where we have to think more deeply. We should be in the rooms where we hear different perspectives from different people, different cultures, a diverse room. We should be in rooms where we are reminded that leadership is still developmental. No matter where we are, no matter our title, no matter if we are tenured in terms of leadership, we could be at the top of the food chain. All of us still need to be reminded that leadership is developmental. In order to get from where we are to where we desire to be, we need development. So you've heard me say this over and over again. This is one of my mantras here. And I always say, if you are the smartest person in the room, folks, you are in the wrong room. You need to get out of that room where you're not challenged, where you're not pushed. You need to get out of that room and get into another room where others are challenging you, where they're pushing you, but also where they're encouraging you. And that's one of the reasons community matters. That's one of the reasons community, being part of a community, is so important and so critical in leadership. Not because leaders are weak, so we can't function on ourselves, but because we are human beings. And as human beings, we are relational. We need others. We need to be around others. And leaders who keep growing are usually the leaders who refuse to be isolated, who refuse isolation themselves, who refuse to be by themselves all the time, but realizing that relationships, environments, or atmospheres and conversations is important for real development. That's what we're talking about. So let me say something else here, because I think it needs to be said. And I know it matters, folks, if you're watching this, whether in live or in replay. See, one of the dangers of isolation is that it can make leaders feel like we are growing when we are really just repeating ourselves. We may have more experience. We may be more tenured. We may have more responsibility. We may have more demands. But experience alone is not always growth. Sometimes it is just repetition with more pressure. Sometimes it is the same thinking at a higher level. The same habits, just in a bigger role. Same habits with a bigger title. We have the same blind spots, just with greater consequences. And that's why isolation for leaders can be extremely deceptive, because it allows us as leaders to keep moving without necessarily being transformed. And you heard what I said last week. If you missed last week's episode, I want you to go back and check that one out, because that was number one, the first episode in our series, Leadership Gaps. So go back and watch that, and then you can watch this, and next week will be the third one. This is the gap between growth and isolation. And folks, that's why part of this, of terms of what we are discussing here. That's why it's so important, because as you know, if you are a leader, whether new or tenured, hopefully you desire growth. Hopefully you desire development. See, as leaders, we can want growth. We can sometimes talk about growth. We can read about growth and still stay too isolated to actually experience the depth of growth that we need. We can talk about it, we can read about it, but we need to move on. We need people, we need community, we need support. That is exactly why intentional environments and intentional development matters to us as leaders. That's why for us at the Jackman Group, through our impact leaders, that's why we care. This is one thing that we care about, is developing leaders and enhancing teams. Well, that's two things. But it's something that we care about deeply, because we know that leadership growth is not just about information. Neither is it just about ambition. It is also about environment. It's about atmosphere. And it's about what happens when leaders stay connected to the right people, the right conversations, the right challenges, and the right support. And that's exactly what's happening right now as we are going into our third week. We just completed the second week of our Impact Leaders Spring 2026 Leadership Experience. Next week will be week 3 of our 5-week series. And it's taking place right now. It's in a room where we have leaders coming together. They're engaging each other. They're learning. They're being challenged. They're being supported. And they are growing in community. They're not growing in isolation. They're growing in the community. And that is also why our upcoming opportunities matter. And you'll start to hear more about what we'll be offering late spring and throughout the summer. If you are in the Rochester area, we will be offering May 28th, Thursday, May 28th, or Entrepreneurs and Leaders Connect. That's going to be an in-person event because leaders need spaces to connect. You'll start to hear more about that in the coming weeks. And then, folks, be on the lookout. Be on the lookout this summer, wherever you are in the world. If you have internet, if you can get on to Zoom, be on the lookout. This summer, we are going to have our 2026 Impact Leaders Masterclass. It's going to be our Impact Leaders Masterclass Wednesdays. That's every Wednesday from July 8th through August 5th. Stay tuned. More information to come. We have some exciting things lined up for you, leaders, potential leaders, emerging leaders. Because leaders, as leaders, we do not just need content, right? We just don't need information. We need community. We need people. We need relationships. We need support. We need development to go from where we are to where we desire to be and where we should be. We need the kind of environment where growth becomes more than intention. That's what we need. So as we prepare to end this episode, which was the gap between growth and isolation, we're going to move into our reflection segment. This is an opportunity for you to really think on and reflect as to where you are. And I'm going to give you one question on this episode. And here we go. Where in your leadership might isolation be slowing your growth? I'll say that again. Where in your own leadership might isolation be slowing your growth? This is a question for you to reflect on, to really think on and ponder. Is it slowing? Are you carrying too much alone? Are you processing too much alone? Where is it? Where is the gap? And what are you willing to do about it? Are you trying to become more without staying connected to the people and environments that actually help you grow? Those are some questions that I really want you to ponder on. I really want you to reflect on. I really want you to think on. It's important for your personal and professional development. Because if you're leading a team, you cannot remain isolated. We all need each other. We need relationships. We need community. So that is what we wanted to cover on tonight. So I want you to think about this. Not only the reflection questions, but I'm going to leave you with this thought. Growth is important, but growth in isolation is incomplete. The leaders who keep growing, the leaders who keep expanding, the leaders who keep developing well are usually the leaders who stay in the right rooms, connected to the right people, having the right conversations, and all that is done with intention. That is how perspective deepens. That is how blind spots get challenged. And that is how leadership becomes stronger and more mature over time. Friends, I want to thank you for being here. I want to thank you for your continued support. This month, this is April, this month, we're celebrating 6 years of the 30. We started way back in 2020, when we were in COVID, and I wanted to do something that will help people. That was the thought and the goal at that point. The broadcast at the time was called Pause Break 30 because we were in a pause. Then we evolved. We started adding more and more to it. We started focusing on communities. We started focusing on individuals and growth in businesses. We're at the point now we're focusing on leadership and developing leaders and entrepreneurs, leaders in all spaces, entrepreneurs in all spaces. You're going to hear a lot more as we move forward in 2026. But I just want to say thank you. Those of you who have been with us since 2020, and those of you who have recently joined us, thank you for your support. Thank you for being here, because without you, there's no us. So thank you, thank you, thank you. May God bless you. May God keep you. May God watch over you and your family. We'll see you next week.